I want to take you back to a day in my life. It was December 4th, 2024, so not too long ago. And all had been rather well with my spirit since the election. I mean, I had felt honestly spiritually prepared for the outcome. And I was taking it kind of easy, resting to ready myself for the onslaught that I knew 2025 would bring. My spiritual practice and combined with the day-to-day dramas of raising young children kept me grounded and centered. And at that point, I had not been depressed, nor down, nor enraged for more than a few minutes. More importantly, I had not cried. Until December 4th, I went to see Wicked, Part 1, in the theater. It was nearly empty midday, and when Cynthia Erivo sang that song, Defying Gravity, something had changed within me. Something broke open within me, and I was sobbing, practically sliding down to the floor. I had to bite my jacket to keep from wailing and keening out loud. I mean, I was crying like I had not in years. And I was saying through the tears, how can I define gravity? How? It's gravity. I felt the full force of that song. Really, the notes themselves strike a chord in the heart. When I saw Wicked on Broadway with my children on the 20th anniversary and Elphaba hit those notes, we all gasped and choked. And one of my children turned to me, his eyes sparkling, and asked, "Why am I crying?" Musically, the song itself feels barely possible. And then there's that story that we all grew up with of the Wicked Witch of the West, powerful but alone with her crystal ball. And then the wizard, all powerful and all alone. So there I was, watching that movie, crying like a child, but I actually wasn't alone. Bryce was there with me, do you remember? And asking, how do we defy gravity through the sobs? Do you remember what you said that day? Together, you said. We will defy gravity together. And that's Dorothy's power, isn't it? The way she brings her family and her sense of home and that strong sense of place with her into the land of Oz. It's that group project of defying whatever evil they encounter with their collective, scrappy cleverness together, and ultimately dousing its tremendous, impossible power with something as simple as water. But back to that song, Defying Gravity. Elphaba finally realizes in that song her own personal power. She feels it coursing through her. She understands finally all she is capable of, and she cannot wait for others to catch up with her. She will not negotiate with terrorists. She will not capitulate the rights and dignity of those she defends. And because she was not well loved as a child, she makes her first and her greatest mistake. She goes it alone. And for a while, she does it. She does defy gravity. Her power is magnificent. That song is brimming over with her ferocious, singular, hopeful, personal power. And I believe this is a moment to contemplate our own personal power, as well as our collective power. Because, friends, we may have to do something as difficult as defy gravity. Even if it means finding ways to thrive when the political powers aim to keep you low, to keep you fearful, anxious, terrorized, sick, or worse. We will have to find ways to live whole, full lives in spite of it all, and especially now. We will not give up our peace for these 4 years or any amount of time. Amen? Quaker theologian Parker Palmer has something to say to us about this concept we heard earlier, the growing edge. He writes, "To see life steadily and to see it whole, we must find ways to hold the paradox of life in death and death in life. We can't live lives of meaning and purpose if we succumb to the horrors of apocalypse now, or if we fly off into the Aquarian fantasy of a day when peace will guide the planets and love will steer the stars." And given what is going on in the U.S. and around the world, it is easy for some of us to think apocalypse 24/7 and to fall prey to the anger and paralysis that comes with it. And we live in an era when, to quote Howard Thurman, times are out of joint and men have lost their reason. Okay, we'll say people have lost their reason, but while worlds crash and dreams whiten into ash. Without turning away from all the grieving and dying, we're not going to stick our heads in the sand either, which rightly held can redouble our commitment to life. We must learn to look well to the growing edge. When he calls the growing edge the basis of hope in moments of despair, the incentive to carry on, he's not indulging a cheap fantasy. These words came from a black man born into a culture of white supremacy, only one generation away from his grandmother's experience as an enslaved human being. He stood in a long lineage of lived testimony to the fact that new life beckons to us even in the midst of horrors. So, Parker Palmer asks us the same question I ask myself. What is the growing edge of your life? Some find it inwardly as they reach for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. Some find it with other people at an edge where a relationship needs to begin or change or end. Some find it in their work as they look for ways to bring their gifts into deeper alignment with their soul's imperatives and the world's needs. Others find their growing edge in the struggle for justice in a broken world. The growing edge is rich with the promise of new life, but in our experience, moving toward it is often as slow as the growth of a plant. So the process requires patient tending. We seem to go through 3 stages before we can begin to see and have confidence in the flowering. The first is a barely perceptible nudge towards who knows what, mystery. This often takes the form of feeling that we're somehow out of alignment within our souls, or are out of alignment with our relationships, or our work, or with the world's needs. It's a quiet, intuitive sense that we've lost our way. We made a wrong turn somewhere, or we were forced to take a detour, or we were barreling down a speedway without paying attention. That's when we have to pull over, get out of the car, breathe, acknowledge that we're lost, and resist the anxiety that compels us to look for the well-marked road and miss the clues that point us towards the heart's imperatives. If we get too anxious about our not knowing, we'll either fail to begin or it will force a false outcome. It's living itself that begins to clarify where our growing edge might be. The second stage might be called arrival. But in the place where we've arrived, it can be hard to tell whether this is an ending or a beginning. It may feel like an empty space where what came before is long lost and what's to come has yet to show up. If we try to fill this void with work, make work, and other distractions because we cannot tolerate the ambiguity, then we will miss the growing edge. Our inner work is to embrace the paradox that new beginnings are also endings. Favor beginner's mind over past expertise, and face into the risk that what we find out on the edge of our lives may be something we don't know how to work with yet. At this point, it's easy to look behind us and romanticize the sense of security we had back in the day, forgetting that it was a sense of lostness that set us on the path to this strange new world. The third stage might be called surrendering to new life. That may sound like a piece of cake. What's not to like about new life? But there are times when it feels easier to relapse into some form of death in life. The situation we thought we wanted to grow beyond may be killing us, but at least we knew the ropes. While the new and the strange may bring challenges we can't imagine, let alone surmount. As the Guatemalan poet Julia Esquivel puts it, we are often threatened by resurrection. Friends, we are recalibrating toward a new world, one where we are barraged by threats, fears, and in many ways, this is a big part of the human story of survival under great threat. And so we can know that and look to other communities who have survived. But in our lifetimes, for many of us, this level of threat feels new. The growing edge flourishes when you are in your power, when you are loved into strength, when your strength is reflected back to you, whether in the mirror or by your community, when you are beheld in a loving way, when you know you are loved, either by a God or divinity, the universe, by a loving force beyond all understanding, when you are loved by one or by many, you can feel yourself begin to take up more space on this earth. You know you are worthy. You don't have to ask for it from anyone. No empire, no state, no government. You know it. I remember hearing this term, the growing edge, long ago when I was training for a moment to be a public school teacher. We had to watch ourselves teach a lesson and on a video in front of the entire class. And then the classmates would offer critique to one another of what we had just watched. Now, watching a video of yourself is not great. It's not fun. And watching a video of yourself in front of your classmates, even worse. And then having to hear them critique you, nearly unbearable. But the professor would frame the critique. She would ask, now what were this person's strengths? And where was her growing edge? The growing edge is the place where we need to grow. And isn't it hopeful that there is more for us than we ever thought possible? So where can you approach this moment in a loving relationship with your growing edge? Where do you need to grow now? Do you need to grow in courage? Is it time for you to step into leadership in a way you never have before? Grow in compassion? Has the time arrived for you to expand your heart and let more people in? Grow in rest and self-preservation? Is it finally time to take care of yourself really well? I mean, really, really well. Better than even your mother took care of you. See, I believe the growing edge is calling many of us to care for ourselves in deeper and more sustaining ways. You may need to dedicate even more time and energy to self-love and self-fulfillment, especially as you are now wrestling with an uncompromising bully of the highest degree. You see, many of us have already dealt with authoritarian forces in our lives. Our fathers were too controlling for us to feel safe. Our previous partners were too manipulative for us to feel sane. Our old boss was too harmful for us to feel our own agency. And now this malevolent presence looms over our republic, our rights, our safety, and it reminds us of someone we thought we had escaped. And now we are under the thumb of this prevalent force. Slowly it is coming for our acquaintances, then our friends, then our family, and then us. Or so it seems. Or so it wants you to believe. but you have so much power. You have so much power. So take care of yourself really well. Love yourself like it is your job. It is your job. Yeah, the state's not going to do it for you. It's your job. Ready yourself for your next move, be it large or small, be it inner work or outer work. It all matters, congregation. It all matters. Becoming a more compassionate, more loving, more empathetic person is more than enough. You are enough. You are resisting. If you are to commit the sin of empathy, then sin boldly and sin often. Self-love is the growing edge for internalized oppression. See, it doesn't want you to feel that. The hope of this world, however, is you. The hope of this world is in your choice to love openly, fiercely, and proudly, to be more gay. The hope of this world lies in your choice to keep your peace strong and steady against the maelstrom. The hope of this world lies in your choice to rejoice and celebrate, not because we have won, but because we are alive, and life is worth celebrating. See, we don't need to ask anyone's permission to experience joy. The hope of this world lies in your choice to take up your cause with verve and gusto, to take on roles you never thought possible until now. The hope of this world lies in your agency, your freedom always to choose the small choices and the major choices, to give life and to live freely in every way you can while we still can. So where do you find the growing edge? Friends, we are the hope of this world. Our energy, our capacity, our dreams, our efforts are precious and sacred. So love yourself well. You are so precious, and you are the hope of this world. As the daffodils and tulips and cherry blossoms rise to meet the sky, now is the time to seek and find your growing edge. I'll meet you there.